You're listening to the Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. And so I'm excited. We have, always my favorite topic is making money, guys, right? And so what we're going to talk about today is raising money. Okay. You got to get money to do business, to do your deals, right? So I have Marcin Drozdz. He's the managing partner of M1 Real Capital, where he and his team focus on acquiring value-add multifamily properties throughout the Southeast. Over the past 16 years, he has helped acquire over 1,500 units across the U.S. and established himself as the go-to in the world of capital raising real estate acquisitions. Marcin, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Thank you, sir. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. So, guys, what we're going to talk about is basically raising money for your real estate deals. But before we get into that, tell me a little about your background and kind of how you got started in this game.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad like so many other people when I think I was a teenager. I read the book, thought to myself, I could do, and 16, so it was probably 20 plus years ago now. Even then there weren't any $40,000-$50,000 houses around
Right.
where I was living. So there's a little bit of a disconnect, but regardless, read the book, started hanging out with real estate guys. I was supposed to become a lawyer, went to school for law related studies, things like this. And I didn't have anybody in the real estate world in my network, in my family. So how I got my foot in the door is I offered to drive for sale signs around for realtors for free. And I banged up my already banged up old Volkswagen Golf with the big iron signs thrown in the trunk. And I just wanted a reason to be in the office, to listen to the brokers, the mortgage people, the property managers that would zip around. And yeah, after about 6 months, one of the realtors took some pity on me and kind of took me under their wing and showed me how to do things. I saved up some cash, bought my first rental property. One thing led to another. And after a few years of that, I got recruited into private equity. And that was like drinking from a fire hose, Curtis. I got to tell you, I thought I discovered crypto. I don't know where I was after a certain point, because you're buying these houses and then you're in this environment where guys are buying entire apartment buildings, entire communities. And, you're doing land assemblies, equity raises, debt negotiations, just a totally different world. So spent a couple of years doing that. And after you go into buying apartment buildings, you don't look at anything the same way anymore. So, that spoiled me early. And a few years after that, started putting on my own limited partnerships together, started buying apartment buildings myself with our partners. And yeah, I've been fortunate. I've sourced well into 9 figures on the private side. I've done a lot of different things, primarily throughout the U.S. And by the way, that's important because I'm also a Canadian. So
Okay.
don't hold that against
That
me.
is important, right?
That is important, right? So on top of it all, doing the cross-border thing. So look, it's been interesting. It's been fun. And when COVID first hit, like so many other people,
There's no beaches in Canada. Can you say
no?
He says I'm recording from the.
No, I'm on the beach. I'm in Florida.
There you go.
So I'm always down in Florida for a good portion of the winter, right? Let someone else deal with it.
Right, exactly. Okay.
It's a different world. But yeah, I mean, look, I realized that fundraising for real estate, or as you mentioned, entrepreneurs, business people in general. I mean, look, you and I both know the same quote: "He who raises the most money typically wins." Right. So it is a skill. It is interchangeable, whether it's real estate or your tech company, or you're trying to figure out how to get some startup capital for your small business. There are very interchangeable lessons to be learned with the art of learning how to raise capital, for sure.
Do you it seems like I want to talk about private equity for a second. So that seems like that kind of really gave you a mindset of, okay, I could buy the business or the whole thing, really expand, getting around other people and looking at, because really the difference is between that and residential is just a few zeros. I mean, how much? So is it more in your head than?
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because some of our students and some of our clients, they're just like, yeah, I could never do that. I go, do what? They're like, well, do what you're doing. You buy 100, 200, 300 apartments. I go, well, the fact that you've said that, you're right. They're like, well, what do you mean? I go, if you're telling me you can't do it, you're just, your brain, that's a lazy answer. Like that's just lazy. That's a cop out. right? Because I can tell you for one that the difference between buying 20 units and 200 units, fundamentally, the difference is, like you just said, just a few zeros.
Mhm.
So how big can you think? How much of a self-worth do you have, and how much of a self-belief do you have? And it really does come back to mindset, because you've got some of your listeners, whether they've bought duplexes or fourplexes. I can tell you right now, what you know at that level, multiply that by 10, it's the same. The math doesn't change. There's more zeros involved, but
Mhm.
you put in just as much effort as getting a property manager, getting financing, potentially getting an investor, as you would for a larger transaction. So think big.
Right. Okay. And see, so, and I wanted to pull that out because one of the things we always say is that, and I teach our clients, is that investing is not about buying something, it's more about becoming something, right? And
Mhm.
so there is a process. You work with, you teach people how to do this, right? So there's a process to becoming, and you got to want to do some work, learn some
Mm.
stuff. And sometimes learning new stuff is uncomfortable, but success lies outside the comfort zone. And so people are always like, oh, I hear about mindset. Well, everybody you hear, they've all read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which changed their mindset. And then they
Yeah.
had what Tony Robbins called personal power, which is the
Mhm.
ability to get yourself to take action. That's the other
Yeah.
part of that, right? And any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. Investing isn't so much about what you're doing; it's about who you have to become to be able to
Yeah.
do it. I mean, you're spot on. I heard it another way. Actually, I went to one of Robert's Kiyosaki's events years ago, and he had a conference. It was literally how to raise capital, the number one skill set of an entrepreneur. And this must have been a decade plus ago, somewhere in AZ when they were doing it. And I remember he wrote three words on the board. He wrote "be, do, have."
Right.
And I don't know if you remember hearing that or in one of his
Yes. Yeah.
books, but
Uh-huh.
the B was, you got to take action. You got to go do stuff, right? Pardon me. B was, you have to mentally align yourself
Yeah.
with the ability to take action. The do is obviously the take action have, and the have is, well, the result therein, right? So, and it is a mental block for people to be able to go from that duplex to 10plex to 20 unit to 50 units. And you have to become a different person. Like, I'll give you an example. I was on the phone with a hedge fund out of New York, and I'm walking them through my portfolio and my vision and where I'm going. And I think I'm operating at a pretty decent level. And the guy says to me, he goes, "Look, Marcin, I love what you're doing, but you're a little small for us." I go, "Okay, what do you mean?" He goes, "Well, our smallest client is 1 billion." I laughed. I go, "Oh, okay. So you're kind of telling me I'm still playing at the kids' table and you're waiting for me to grow up." And he just starts laughing, right? Like, this is the funniest thing he did. He goes, "In so many words, yes." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Perfect. Now I know what the next hurdle is." Right. So it's like, and it gives you something to aspire to. So
Yeah.
rather than going, "Oh man, I'm never going to be at that level," you think to yourself, "Okay, so what do I have to do differently to get to that level? Like, what is it? What is the bottleneck?" And in some cases, it's me. In some cases, it's underwriting. In some cases, it's deal flow, capital raising, whatever it is. But you have to become that person to be able to do the things at the level that you want to operate at. And rather than just taking the easy answer and saying, "I'll never get there," or "That's too hard," or "I don't have the money," or "People aren't going to take me seriously," or "Why would anyone do business with me?" All these
Yeah.
self-limiting beliefs and thoughts. It's just toxic. Like, so much of this stuff. Look, there's so many people out there that can teach you how to do great deals.
Mhm.
That's perfect. Great. There's few people that actually focus on the person you have to become to get there. Because that is that, I can give you everything I do on a silver platter, but if you mentally can't see yourself executing that plan, it doesn't matter. Which,
Right.
what you said at the beginning is so,
Yeah, that is so
love it.
powerful. I don't, because I'm glad you teased that out a little bit, because I think people will just want to skip over that. And that's major. If there's a Dan Sullivan says, don't double, you don't want to double, you want to 10x, because you have to become a completely different person. So I'll think about that. Or if I want to run a $5 million company, all right, there's systems, I have to be a better leader. I'm going to think differently. And that's, and so what am I doing to do that? Right. Because you're not going to just work a little bit harder and get there. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a question what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I was thinking when we were talking in terms of, you said deal flow, right? And so should you, and then I want to get into the easy system, but
Yeah.
should you have a deal and then try to raise money, or are you raising money, or I guess part of this is, you got to be attractive so people want to give you money, or the deal needs to be attractive, or your team. So I threw a couple things in there, but I know it's more than just raising capital. So maybe
Mm.
talk to them about what they need to become to
Yeah.
or start to become so they can do that.
Sure. Right. And it goes without saying, before you actually raise money, get the right advice, legal, accounting, get your paperwork in order, because fundraising is a regulated activity, US, Canada, all over the world. Follow the rules, guys. Spend the money, get the lawyers, get the accountants, get it all set up proper.
Yes.
But above and beyond that, my experience, Curtis, is that you need to, even without a deal, you need to make it very clear for people the kind of things you do, the kind of person you are. You got to build your reputation, your public presence. You got to have some kind of a way, like some kind of a sphere of influence, some way for you to add value to your community. Now, different people do it in different ways. Some people write blogs, newsletters, they might put podcasts, they might do events, whatever it is, but you have to, Facebook groups, or just active on social media. You have to have the giver mentality, where you're truly trying to help people move along without a ulterior motive or agenda. And what I just said is a lot of work. Just,
Right.
for those of you who don't know, it's work, because no one's going to pay you for, the outreaches you're doing to help people, help your network. But that is really a starting point. Now, the next piece to that is getting clear on what your niche is. And we teach this with our students and some of our clients. Is number one, there's 6 components to this. Number one, you have your personal story. So in other words, we're all unique. We've all had stories. We've all had different experiences that have really forged us as a human being and made you more credible, shown tenacity, shown grit. Myself, I was smuggled out of Eastern Europe into Western Europe before we came to North America to escape communism. And there's a whole story there, me being apart from my parents. And, it makes you authentic. It makes you relatable. So you have to be able to tell your story in a concise way, because when you meet somebody, they don't all want to hear about your real estate deal as soon as they meet you. I mean, actually quite the opposite. They typically don't know if they care yet. it's,
Right.
it's just that initial interaction. The second piece is your unique advantage. So what makes you unique in the marketplace? So for example, for me, I was fortunate because I got into private equity really early, and I got to see how the cake is made, so to speak, right from scratch. So going from single family to small multifamily right into the big boy deals.
Mhm.
And for me, that was a tremendous advantage in my early 20s, because I immediately saw the world differently. For other people, it might be, hey, I grew up in a household of real estate people. I grew up construction people.
Mhm.
My dad is a real estate broker. My mom was running a property management company. What is that thing that gave you access or a leg up? Or it could be non-real estate related. It could be, hey, I started my first business when I was 22. I sold this. What is it about you that makes you credible as a person in the context of business and real estate?
Mhm.
Then you have things like you pick your market, you pick your strategy. I can't tell you how many people try to talk about all of the things they're doing, and they think they sound smart, but it's just overwhelming. Somebody will tell you, well, I've got a few Airbnbs and we're buying a storage facility and we have some multifamily. And by the way, we also lend money. And I'm just listening, like, dude, unless you're running like $1 billion business with like 100 employees, I don't believe you're doing anything well, because you got way too much stuff going on.
Mhm.
Like you
Mhm.
can't, like I'm at 16 years. I do multifamily. I build teams. I raise capital. I build structures. I'm focused on a very specific thing. The people that talked to me 15 years ago, I'm still doing the same thing. Now, I understand the other asset classes, but I stay in my lane because I can be tremendously effective in that business. So that's another rant we can go off. You can't build
Right.
momentum if you're not
Right.
focused, right?
Yeah, you gotta pick a horse and ride it, I always say, right?
Yeah,
And
because if you're jumping from thing to thing because you get excited and there's hype, and all of a sudden, hey, Bitcoin's a big thing, and you start pumping crypto, and now you're in Bitcoin mining, and again, not to poo-poo on any one thing. It kind of doesn't matter what you pick, just pick it and stick to it, because there's always going to be, it's always going to look like the grass is greener somewhere else.
Right.
And from an investor standpoint, if you're trying to, whether you're trying to raise money, recruit people in your team, get people to partner with you, get people to send you deals, if people see you zigzagging all over the place like a dog chasing shiny cars on the highway, you're going to get,
Yeah, you have no credibility. And
no,
so every time you talk to, you're in something new.
yeah.
And so you have no credibility in the marketplace and you're not focused because you don't give your efforts time to compound.
Yeah. Well, Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, I mean, it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in anything. So that could mean 5 years of full-time effort, 10 years part-time effort, or so on and so forth. And so many people go on Facebook or Instagram and they see somebody posting a picture of the check that they got off a refinance or off a sale, off a flip, off something. They see the pictures of the vacation or the Lamborghini and they're at their job and they're going, I want to do that tomorrow. It's like, you gotta,
Right. It's funny. I was talking to a client last week and they found me through Instagram and they were like, well, I've been doing e-commerce, but it didn't work. And but when she was telling me what she was doing, I says you're not doing it right. Cause I've interviewed a couple people on that
right.
but now I think I heard this person that they'll say that does wholesaling or they're doing this and they're getting property and cashing out and doing the Burr method. So I think now I want to try that, you
Yeah.
know? And so that language right there
Yeah.
is a problem. Like you really, to me, your fastest path to cash was figure out how to do the thing you were doing because you already know some stuff
Yeah.
about that. Now, I mean, take your profits and maybe you do real estate, but you could make $1 million doing that if you learn what you're doing.
Yeah.
And everybody jumps around to so that's such a good point. I don't need to go off on it. I could go off on a tangent on that too.
Oh, you and I you could do a seminar on this thing just for the full day.
Yeah.
I equate it to, I had my class last night and I was teaching and I equated to, you look at a ship, a small boat, you've got the bow. The bow is it's the smallest point and the most focused point of the boat because you need to push through the ocean.
Mhm.
And that focus, that clarity, that messaging, if it's laser focused, you can cut through stuff and you can move forward. You can build momentum because you're not dragging your mass. The drag is minimal.
Mhm.
And getting something off the ground, anything. I mean, you've been in business for quite a while. I mean, getting anything off the ground, a lemonade stand, a restaurant, a financial services business, real estate business, whatever business you pick, it's a ton of work. So the more things you try to add to it to appeal to a broader audience, the wider the front of your boat or the bow of your boat gets, and then you start pushing the entire ocean with you, and you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Like it's just not going to work. Now,
Inefficient. Yeah. I mean, I am because I have shiny object. I'm the king of shiny object syndrome. And every week I'm interviewing
oh, I
people
get it.
giving me new shiny objects. But it's like, let me stay in my lane. Here's what I do. Here's what I like to do. Here's what I'm good at. And I can make whatever I want to make doing what I'm doing. Now, maybe later I'll add something to the portfolio, but that's the thing.
Yeah,
I think it goes back to you got to pick because I think if you're raising money, they want to see that one, why you're
you're
unique,
focused.
why, because one of the things I'll talk to people if I'll do business coaching, right? Why should I work with you versus any and all other choices I have, including doing whatever I'm doing now or doing nothing? So I'm
Yeah,
paraphrasing Dan Kennedy, right? Of a unique selling proposition, but that's because otherwise you're a commodity. Why should I do money business with you versus anybody else? And so a lot of people can't answer that question. And to me, if you can't answer that question, you don't have a business.
it's a valid point. Yeah, but it's a valid point. And I mean, if you take that one step further, so it's tough enough to get a client, whether you're in the services business, at whatever widgets you're producing, it's tough enough to get a client. Now, extrapolate that sales process to the other side of the equation where you're trying to get somebody to lend money to you, to invest money into your business. They need to understand that you're clearly focused on that other side of the equation because
Mhm.
they don't want to put, X dollars into your business and then 6 months later hear about you now starting another thing.
Right.
Like they want to see you execute that business. And that I think if you start to think about it from that perspective
Yeah.
as would you invest in yourself?
Yeah.
That will give you tremendous clarity. Now, so Curtis, just to finish off. So I said
Yeah.
the strategy is important.
Right.
So again, are you buy and hold? Are you fix and flip? Are you burr? What are you doing? Like get laser focused on that. That is really important because obviously you've got the last piece. And I talked about the market, I talked about the strategy, talked
Right.
about what makes you unique,
Advantage.
your story,
Mm-hmm.
your personal story. The last piece is your track record, your team, your credibility, the things that show me that you've thought through how you're going to execute this piece here. Because you need to be able to demonstrate this. And when you have these components figured out, and you notice how I didn't say, and by the way, here's the deal, because the deal is the last piece of the equation. The deal is actually incredibly important, but the deal doesn't matter until you give me the context of everything else first. And for me, teaching those concepts is tried and true because whether I went out for a $50,000 commitment or a $50 million term sheet, you're ultimately getting in the door with the contextual conversations first, and then you substantiate it with, and this is why we want to do this deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that deal in the context of real estate, if you've done a good job on the other parts, people will understand why Florida, why Kentucky, why Tennessee, why whatever. And then further to that, why multifamily, further to that, why Burr, further to that, why me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're missing that deal, then that's fine because you're still building interest with people and credibility. And most people underestimate how long it's going to take to get somebody to actually be comfortable to invest with you. Above and beyond that, just because you have a deal and you go to market doesn't mean people are ready to cut you a check, right? So to answer your earlier question, definitely market when you have a deal,
Right.
but you should already have, and we'll talk about the whole E.A.S.Y system. You should already have people that you're engaged with in the conversation well before you have a deal, so that when you're ready for that deal, you have the confidence to paper it. I mean, right now, I just wrote on a 90 unit portfolio here in Tampa, and I'll hear back on it today, tomorrow, whatever it is. And I'm sure by the time this podcast airs, I'll have either bought it or passed on it or whatever it is. But I know that I have the ability to fund this thing within a few days from once I commit to it.
Yeah.
Because there's a tremendous backlog of people that already understand all the things that I've walked you through and are contextually on board with me, whether it's in Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Georgia, Savannah, wherever we want to go, they're on board because they understand the context behind it. And now it's just the deal that fits.
Yeah, the money's out there. I mean, with all the money printing, there's money sloshing around,
Yeah.
but you've got to put it together. They want to make sure that you care about returning the capital with a profit. You got to have done some stuff. It seems to me you have to have done some stuff. I was thinking about when you said this. I have a client, shout out Dan, the real estate man. He's he's probably national, but he's local to.
It's a good name, Dan the real.
No, Dan. Oh, do name, yeah.
No, I don't know him, but I like the name.
Yeah, we were talking and he was doing. We first met. We were speaking at a real estate thing. He spoke the week before me, so I asked him, and he was doing. This is probably about 3 years ago. Instagram lives, right, or Facebook lives, just teaching stuff and walking through houses, talking about his deals. And he wasn't selling anything and have a course. And I couldn't understand why he was doing that. I said, why do you do that?
Right.
And one, it was that he wanted to share stuff. So he's doing community service. It actually made him better presenter.
Yeah.
And then he took a class. He said he spent a couple thousand doing a class on raising money. He said it was the best money he ever invested, because now he's got a track record because he already had 15, 20, 25 properties. And now he's sharing, people seeing him do the walkthrough. So now he can raise a couple $1 million inside of, he told me, a few weeks with maybe 10 or 15 people that he's already made the money. Even when he had a loss, he made sure they were made whole, integrity, right? And because there's money sitting in self-directed IRAs, they're tired of the stock market risk. And so they're just looking for a good operator that can make them money. Okay. Yeah. And so but he's proven that his scope of work, that he's a good operator. And there's a process. And that wasn't overnight. I mean, he's been doing this about almost 20 years, but he was really starting to show it in my mind when I met him about 4 years ago, and just gotten better ever since. So that was like, to your point, you're saying that, I was thinking about, okay, I've watched this happen.
Well, and once you're at a point where you want to scale the business, I don't care who you are, you will run out of money. It happens to the best of us, whether that's $100,000, $1 million. 10 million bucks, whatever your net worth is, eventually you'll hit a wall. It happens. It happens to everybody. Multimillionaires.
Bank doesn't want to lend you money past a certain amount of deals, 10
Yeah.
residentials. You got to get creative. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, everybody raises money. Millionaires raise money, billionaires raise money. Raising money is another Kiyosaki quote. He says, if you're using your own money for this deal, you're lazy.
I like it.
That always made me laugh. He goes,
Right.
if you use your own money, you're lazy. Made me
Because he always say, I want infinite returns.
yeah,
Right?
you want to create an infinite rate of return, right? That was
Unfair advantage. Like, I don't want 10, 12%. I want infinite returns on everything I do. Right. That 12% doesn't excite me.
yeah.
So
Well,
30% does excite me. I want infinite.
well, he's at a different level
Yeah.
too. I
Yeah.
think most people, if they could passively get double-digit returns there.
That's what you're going to get. But and you talked about the different level of investments, right? And you got to move up the food chain with your knowledge and that kind of stuff. But let's stay on. Don't let me take you off on a tangent.
Well, let's talk about the E.A.S.Y system because
Yeah.
I think your listeners will appreciate it. So E.A.S.Y stands for exclusive, abundant, scarce, and your allocation. So the E.A.S.Y system, it plugs into a whole larger process that we teach at M1 with our clients or students. But for your students' purposes here, the E.A.S.Y system will give. This is something they could literally get off the phone or get off this call and utilize it. So the E is exclusive. And what most people have a tough time doing is boiling down maybe 3 or 4 points that make their opportunity, their real estate deal, their business truly one of a kind and exclusive. So, for example, what are some of the factors that really stick out to you? And I don't mean in a way where you have to be a real estate economist to understand it or a financial wizard. Don't I had one student tell me, well, the going cap rate is this, and we're going to be able to stabilize and make the cap rate that. I go, great. No one but me just understood what you just said.
Right,
So,
right, exactly.
so what does that mean in English? She goes, well, there's about $300 per month in the rent. Okay, boom. That's interesting. What else? We're buying this building for half of what it costs to build. Great. What else? The building is on the corner of Main and Main, and there's 50,000 cars that drive by every day. Great. What else? And it's in such and such city and it's growing by 15% per year. Great. So those are things that are exclusive and unique to the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody, regardless of they're informed or educated on real estate, can put 2 and 2 together and think to themselves, oh, you can raise the rents by a couple $100. It's on a busy street. You can't build it for what we're buying it for. Okay. So those are factors that would indicate to anybody that this is potentially a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So that's E, exclusive. A, abundant. So in other words, we talked about it earlier. Do you have a lot of people to talk to on the investment side? There's nothing worse than having a deal and no one to talk to. Because if, there's nothing more powerful than being able to say, hey, my last deal sold out in 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, whatever it was. And it's all a function of the fact that you have a lot of people that are interested in what you're doing. It's really empowering to be able to say, okay, so here's why it's exclusive. Look, happy to walk you through it. I just need you to know that we're closing in X amount of days. I've got X amount of people to talk to still. And again, it's not an arrogance thing. It's just the truth. It's just, talking to a lot of people. And then S, the scarcity. There's 2 types of scarcity. There's the financial scarcity in terms of how much money you need. That is a selling feature because if you only need 500 grand, you only need 500 grand. If you need 2 million, you need 2 million. Once it's done, it's finished. It's not a infinite raise in perpetuity. It is, hey, this is going to be 500 grand. Okay. That's one form of scarcity. The other one is time. So the time, for example, we're closing on X date. We need the funds in by this date. It's first to fund. So there's 2 forms of scarcity there.
Right.
And again, it's just informative. This isn't pressure. This isn't high pressure. These are the facts. So you could say something like, here's why the deal is exclusive. I've got a waiting list that I need to talk to these amount of people. And we're only looking for $1 million. Our average investors, let's say $100,000. So we're only looking for about 8 to 10 potential investors to work with on this. So there's your E.A.S.Y and then what E.A.S.
Mm-hmm.
Why your allocations. You can say, look, I know I'm going to send you the package. You've got some questions and some due diligence that you'll probably want to do. But if everything did check out, what amount would you potentially consider for this? You got to create some kind of a call to action. Now, it could be as direct as that. It could be a little bit more of broader, depending if you're speaking to a large group of people. But you have to have the why is your allocation or your call to action. You have to have some kind of a what's the next step. And again, guys, it's not high pressure. It's no pressure. It's just a fact. Here's what I have. Here's how many people I'm talking to. Here's the limitations around it. So if you want to get involved, here are your next steps.
I love that. What the A stands for? What's the A stand for again?
Abundance.
Abundance. Okay.
Yeah. So you have an abundance of people to talk to. And if you're sitting there, you're listening, well, I don't know an abundance of people to talk to. All right, you got to get off your ass, man.
Right. That's the problem, right? You don't have
you got to get off your ass. If you got a network of 3 people to talk to and one of them has money, you need to go out and, like you said, you got to 10x your activities. So you got go talk to people, go to networking events, figure out what people want, start a newsletter, start a podcast, start doing Instagram lives. You got to build awareness.
You got to build your list. Yeah. I mean, because what I tell people is you got to invest in your mindset, your skill set, and your network, right? Who do you know? But more importantly, to your point, who knows you, out there in the marketplace, and that you're making moves, that you are a person of value, of character, of that kind of stuff. And you demonstrate that daily.
Yeah. And the more you consistently communicate and put out what you do, and the more frequent that, pardon me, not frequent, the more consistent that information flow is, the more credible you become, because just because you started something doesn't mean the next day everyone's going to be like, oh, okay, cool, man. Let me pay attention to you full time. No, I've been at this for 16 years. I still got friends that become a real estate agent. Now, there's nothing wrong with, and God bless real estate agents, because we need them to get the deals done. But my point is, if I have friends that I've been with for 16 years who don't even know what I do to this day, what would compel you to think that just because you started your flipping business or your multifamily business on Friday, the next Tuesday, people are going to start throwing deals at you? Like, it takes time. And that's why every time you shift, every time you change, you lose that momentum, because then you have to re-explain yourself to people. Why did you pivot? Why are you doing this stuff? So then as someone paying attention to you, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to see how long he sticks to this before he changes.
Exactly. Let's see how long. Yeah. And he quits and you start something up. People are looking at you.
Oh yeah. They won't see it, but they'll pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Financial services, that's the biggest thing, is like, just because you got registered to sell insurance doesn't mean people are going to buy it from you day one. They're thinking, okay, is this guy going to be around in 3 or 4 years when I have more questions? Right? There's, intuitively, and whether it's real estate, whatever it is, people are looking at you. They won't say anything, but if you jump around, your credibility is not there.
Right. Right. And because, they want to see that you're stable. You have the same phone number. You're, my clients say, yeah, you're remarkably consistent, and you're still, even 10 years in, you still doing that thing? You still doing the insurance thing? Somebody asked we were at a party this week, and somebody asked my wife's an attorney, right? Are you still doing that? What? I wouldn't do that. What do you mean? I quit the law school. What the hell? That to me, that was the dumbest question I've ever. And this wasn't a dumb person, but it was a stupid. Maybe we're just making conversation. But that's just. Are you still a doctor? I mean, that's the same. In my mind, that's the same thing. But if you're getting that, you've done stuff for people to doubt that you will stick with something. If you get a lot of that.
Yeah. I had a buddy of mine once ask me, still doing that real estate thing? I go, I don't know. Are you still doing that doctor thing? He was a doctor. He just starts laughing. Right. But yeah, look, by and large, my favorite saying is competence creates confidence.
Yeah.
And you can't become competent at something if you keep jumping around. And I know that's not a popular thing to say with social media and all the different things and all the opportunities, but you got to dig into something. And look, if you want to expand your horizons, that's another Kiyosaki quote I heard was what focus stands for. Focus is follow one course until successful. And I don't know if you'd heard that, but that was probably one of my favorites, because it's so easy. The shiny ball, the shiny object syndrome, it's there. It's real. And I mean, social media puts it in your face. So having that discipline to stick to your plan is, that's the real momentum builder, I think.
Yes, that's good stuff. So guys, just, if you're taking notes, the E.A.S.Y system, exclusive, abundant, scarcity, your allocation. So what he's if you're kind of doing this, he's kind of, he talked about your story, your personal story. So you've kind of branded how, not brand it, but give you an outline of how to create talking points so you can explain to people what you're doing. And it's not just to raise capital. Like you could use this in other conversations. As I'm listening to this, is
You can use it in a very broad range of things. And actually, I have a free mini course on my website if your viewers.
yes, I want you to tell them about that and where I know you have a podcast. Tell them how to get in touch with you.
Sure. Yeah. The best way to kind of get in touch. And I mean, if you want to dig more into the E.A.S.Y system or just kind of learn about some of the other things we do, my website is marcindrozdz.com. Hopefully you can put that in the show notes to spell that out for people.
I got that. Yeah. We'll put it in the show notes. Yep.
And then we have m1realcapital.com, which is our real estate investing business. Been my primary world, but as COVID occurred, just like you, I mean, you spent so much time in front of your computer, right? That we ended up building out this entire M1 community with investors and students and people trying to figure out how to scale, how to raise capital. So if I can be of service.
So it's two things going on. Let's just clear. So you'll teach them how to raise capital, but let's say they have capital. You also have, you don't really talk about it here, but you have the ability for them to do stuff with you also.
Yeah, we do. We're fairly active on the real estate side. So yeah, we buy multifamily value add properties, 50 to 150 units, typically at a time, class B, C stuff all throughout the South, Southeast. And we're quite active there. I mean, we do have, you talk about the E.A.S.Y system. We do have quite a bit of we do have a tremendous amount of interest from investors, but if anybody does want to learn about it, put you on the wait list or depending on the timing of it, certainly. Obviously there's rules and regulations and we have a process for people to go through to make sure they're qualified. But yeah, that's through M1 Real Capital. And then if they want to learn how to scale their own real estate business, that's where the M1 Inner Circle and our trainings, which they can see through my personal website.
Right. That's what I wanted to clarify for them. And then I'm about to say it. Do you still have the podcast, right? Do you
yeah,
the game, right?
I've got the game podcast. Yeah. We interview a lot of different people. We had the movie that was, from Jerry Maguire, David Meltzer, so you know the movie Jerry Maguire, that was modeled after a real guy. His name was David Meltzer. So I had him on the podcast, John Asraf, the guy who was on that movie, The Secret, to talk about mindset and things like that. So yeah, we focus on interviewing.
I saw you in a picture with Kevin.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
This conference.
Yeah, Mr. Wonderful. We got a conference coming up. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to air, but that'll be in Toronto, up in Canada in May. So
might come out right before then. So tell them about it.
Sure.
You must have thought about it. Yeah.
We got a conference that we're speaking at. I'm going to be talking about how to raise capital for real estate. It's the multifamily conference in Toronto, Canada, May 14th and 15th. If anyone does want to attend, the promo code M1 will get you a 15% discount off the tickets. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. And I think they're expecting about 1,500 to 1,800 people. So that'll be when they told me I'm speaking right before O'Leary, I was like, oh, okay. Like, do I have to bring coffee?
Right.
What's going on? Am I the warm up act? They're like, no, you do your hour, he'll do his. I was like, all right, cool.
That's cool. Look, Toronto's hot. If you can get there, Toronto's one of my favorite cities. So that's Toronto's nice, and especially in the summer, it's awesome.
Oh, Toronto.
We went in December. It was warm by Canada standards because it was about 35. It's like,
I come back to Canada in May.
Right.
I typically come back to Canada in May. I mean, I'm a Canadian. I split my time between Toronto and Calgary, but I try not to spend too much time in the winter there. It's beating me up.
I hear you.
It's worn me down.
Listen, thank you. This has been a blast, and you dropped some serious, what I call science today. And so hopefully y'all, I have a page of notes. Okay. So if you don't have a page of notes, or if you're driving, you need to re-listen to this again. Okay. And then we're going to have all of the website, the podcast, and his personal site. We're going to have all this stuff in the show notes, his email. And, if it says something that resonated with you and you want to learn how to do this, you're at a point where you feel like this will take to the next level, you have to invest in yourself. Your number one asset is you, right? And you have to invest there, because that's where the money comes from, your ability to create value in the marketplace. Money's a result of that. Okay. So no, understand, I need more money. Well, that's the wrong question. How can I create more value? How can I solve more problems? That's the questions that you need to ask. So anything I didn't ask you that you want to say before?
I've had a ton of fun. I mean, obviously it shows. I love what I do, just like you. And I think if the world be a better place, if you surround yourself with people that are passionate, right? So find your crew, find your people, find the people that light you up, and that's where you should spend your time.
There you go. All right, guys, listen, thanks for listening to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. If you like this, please subscribe. If somebody sent it to you, leave us a review and go out there and make it a profitable day. Marcin, thanks again.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be